when you have a heart-centered desire, the heart is going to do two things all at once. It is going to send a direct order to your higher self, and it's going to send an order to your lower self. The order that it sends to your higher self is bring here now any aspect of my brightness that I need to embrace in order to actualize this desire. And to your shadow self, it will say, bring to my awareness now any repressed part of me that I need to integrate, that I need to learn how to love again in order to actualize this desire.
Welcome to the Soulful Ambition podcast. I'm your host, Analisa Lemming, Broadway actor turned coach for big dreamers. This is a show about choosing to live inside out, becoming sourced from within, and then acting upon your deepest longings. From starting your dream business to starring on Broadway, from sacred activism to being a radiant, aligned parent, and everything in between, we will walk the razor's edge of these two seemingly contradictory words, soulful ambition. This podcast is here to awaken the longing in your chest that is so big it threatens to swallow you whole. Because the manifestation of your true desires is your destined path and the medicine and the magic that the world needs. This is Soulful Ambition. Hello. Oh, I'm so excited to share with you this first episode of Soulful Ambition. And before we dive in, I wanted to share a few things with you. This is a big time for me and for this iteration of my work in the world. So much new. It's springtime, so it feels perfect to launch all of this right now. So, as I mentioned, Soulful Ambition, for those of you who were longtime listeners and lovers of A Balancing Act, I'm thrilled that you're still here. And for those of you new that finding me as Soulful Ambition, welcome. I'd like to bring your attention to my brand new website as well, which is analisalemming.com. And this is the first time I've had a website to support my coaching and this podcast. And I'm so excited about the work that Lovely Impact, the company that I hired, has done to design the branding, the logo, the website. It all just feels so good. It actually feels like I now have the exterior that matches what I've been doing in my coaching practice these last 3 years. So please check it out. You can learn all about coaching with me one-on-one, as well as the group program. You can get on the wait list for that. So please go explore. And there will also be a page for podcasts and show notes and all of that. The other announcement that I would like to kind of drop in here is to, if you're not on my email list and you want to know when the next workshop I do is or event, that will be the best way to do it. So you can go to the website, you can get my free main character energy guide, which is a lot of fun practices. And I am coming to New York City, which I'm so excited. I will be co-creating a workshop with Lauren Elise of Sex Ed for You. We actually have a planning meeting about this tomorrow. We know it's going to be around activating our sexual energy, creation energy, life force energy in order to fuel our big, wild dream. So I don't have a title for you yet. I don't have exact details, but it will be on May 1st, a Wednesday, and we're talking like 3 to 4 hour juicy in-person workshop. So stay tuned, make sure you're on the email list, and I'll be, of course, sharing more as those details emerge. But if you want to save the date and even like travel in, if you're close, I would love to meet you. And if you're a hugger, hug you in person. And then the last thing before we dive into this episode is I am going to ask, and I'm going to ask frequently, is for you to leave a review for the podcast. So after you listen to this episode, if it served in any way, I will ask you just in the same app that you're listening in. Apparently iTunes is best reviews, but it really helps boost the show and gain awareness so that we can share this farther out into the world. that really would mean the world to me. It can be short and sweet. I would deeply appreciate that. And I lied. I have one more thing I want to say. We're on YouTube. So if you're watching this on YouTube, hello. And if you're listening, you can also watch this video. You can watch the guest, feel our energy. I do think that energy moves, not moves, is felt a little bit differently through the video format. And also something that I've done, I know a lot of my clients talk about wanting more structure in their lives, like missing kind of like school aspects of it, right? Like learning and taking notes. I myself have found doing a YouTube podcast with my journal, my notebook, a pen, some good tea, a candle lit, can even be a fun Friday night activity. Maybe that's just me. No, but can feel really deeply nourishing to that part of me that loves to learn. And I get so much from the episodes when I do that. And I, use, questions as prompts for myself to go into, or kind of themes for the week. And so just offering that, if you haven't thought of that before, that could be a really deeply supportive way to take this work beyond listening to it and the ideas and put it into more of a practice if that's something that you're yearning for. And it's free. It's all free. And that's part of why I love doing this podcast, is to make this accessible in this way. So with that, I know this episode is long. This conversation is long. When Xavier agreed to do this podcast with me and agreed to 90 minutes, on the calendar, I was like, I will use every moment, because he's really special, and I invite you to listen all the way to the end. All right. So much love. Thank you for tuning in, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Hello, Xavier. Welcome to Soulful Ambition. Thank you for being here.
Well, it's a deep pleasure to be here, and I'm always excited when I'm in this space of not knowing where a conversation will go and trusting that it will be for the highest good of everyone. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Yes. So let me just share a little bit about Xavier before we dive in. Xavier Dagba is a life coach, shadow work facilitator, writer, and mystic. He tends to think that only when you are willing to illuminate and integrate your endarkened parts can you fully feel alive and embody your power. He feels alive the most when he helps people shed their limitations, embrace their repressed power, and live from the heart, not their wounds. And so I found you through, Instagram. Let's start there. I found you on Instagram, have been following you for a long time, have so resonated, got on your mailing list. I did the resistance workshop.
Yeah.
And then Awaken the Golden Shadow was the most recent workshop that I signed up for. And it's so transformational. It's still available for people. So the link will be below if after this conversation you feel to go journey yourself. But in that workshop, you share some of your personal story, where you ended up leaving your PhD program. You were, please correct any of this if it's incorrect, but you were interning at the UN. Is that right?
I did that in 2000 and, wow, that's been a long time. 2012, I think, right before getting the scholarship for the PhD. I interned there for 6 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that you shared that just stuck out to me so much is that when you were there, you felt like your soul was drying up. And maybe this was also PhD program, maybe some of these things morphed in the conversation, but that you knew that the impact that you were meant to have wasn't going to happen there. And now I see the person in front of me who is a life coach and shadow work facilitator with 143,000 followers on Instagram. Could you have imagined then that this is the way that you would be impacting the world and shining your own golden light?
It's so interesting. I couldn't see this far. Like the work I'm doing today, it was completely outside of what I could think of, imagine. It's like it was outside of my conditioning. And when something is outside of our conditioning, we have a hard time really grasping or wrapping our mind around these things. So many people feel stuck really when something that they desire is outside of their conditioning. That's why we feel stuck. If it was within what we've been conditioned to, you know, to create, to even believe it's possible for ourselves, we can kind of visualize it. But for me, it was completely outside of it. I couldn't see it. It's these moments where you are led by a feeling more than something that is actually objective. There is no linearity in that. And that is precisely what I felt all that time. I couldn't see it. And sometimes when I look at the way the work I'm doing today has turned, there's sometimes a little bit of disbelief. I'm just like, okay, how the hell did I get here? What happened? Because it was completely unplanned. And it was, I often call it working at the speed of surrender
Mm,
or working at the speed of resonance. It is allowing yourself to let that kind of inner voice have a stronger voice at the table of decision within yourself. So that's what I can say. I couldn't see it. I just couldn't see it. And even the ways this work is invited to evolve, a lot of it I cannot see right now. Um, but yeah, I'm not sure if it fully answers your question, but this is how I felt.
yeah. Well, would you be able to share just some of the journey from that to here, and whether it's like some tangible steps, where you are in the world, where
Yeah.
you are now, and maybe some like how did it become more something that you could grasp and see? When did that? Yeah, anything on your journey you feel to share would be beautiful.
I finished my master's. I think it was around 20, it was 2012, or was it 2013? It was around 2012, 20, I was finishing that internship at the branch of the United Nations program for economic development in Africa. I was still there and I was finishing that internship. And then I finished my master's. I think it was July or something, 2013, and I got a scholarship to come to Canada, full paid scholarship. And, it just felt like a beautiful opportunity to come and finish a PhD and to have an opportunity to go work for one of these big organizations where I always wanted to support some sort of change. And at the time I thought, okay, um, it is through helping with policy, economic policies that I was going to be able to do that. When you start studying, a system, you also become aware of the flaws of the system. So as a young idealist that I was, studying the way, the ways big finances and big money work, I was just like, holy shit, my voice is never going to be heard here unless I kind of sell my soul, and I don't want to do that. I was just like, there's no way, because I was around so many brilliant minds that wrote so many like such beautiful research, and none of that mattered. Like none of them were being heard. So there was a moment of disillusionment. And I think disillusionment is something that many people fear, but disillusionment is so sacred. Disillusionment is when you start seeing truth and you start seeing reality without rose-colored glasses. So I had this young idealist part of me that was just like, you know, hungry for some sort of like utopian um, reality or fantasizing. And that part of me got sobered up. And it was painful to a certain degree, but it brought me to the realization that what I was fantasizing about wasn't available where I was. And for so many people, I had so many people tell me back then, well, this is not enough to leave a PhD, and this is not enough to let go of that, and this is not enough um, to let go of, the possibilities for yourself, and you're going to let down so many people and your family. How do you even know you're making something a rational decision? It was not rational. because I could not justify it. It was completely irrational. And to this day, I will stand behind that. I know it wasn't rational because I did not have something tangible to say. I am going for this. I didn't. It was just a feeling, almost like feeling that I was trying to suppress an aspect of me that had something meaningful to say. And trying to repress that was more painful than anything else that I've tried to do. And there was a moment of just surrender, which is making the choice of leaving without having much to support that decision, without having much evidence that I was going towards the right direction and all of these different things, all of these thoughts that came up. So basically what that caused is it put me on a path of facing the fear of rejection and alienation and humiliation and all of these different fears. And they all came true. The rejection from, family because they did not understand how I could just let go of such an opportunity. Um, and I understand why they felt that way. Friends that to them, I was just crazy. For them, it was just like, man, this guy must be nuts. You traveled for more than 5,000 miles. You are in a different country and you just decide to drop it all. Like you don't have any safety net. That was my reality. I did not have any safety net. And I basically had to rebuild from really, really low, you know. Um, and that is a big aspect of this journey is to build trust with the fabric of the universe itself. It's like this calling that has been, the word that comes up is oppressing you because sometimes the calling feels oppressive when we are in resistance to it. But really tune into the reality that this calling is also benevolent in the sense that you are equipped with everything you need within yourself. You're equipped with everything you need so that you can rise to the occasion and meet the requirements necessary to bring that calling to life or to bring that vision to life. Now, I can speak to this with as much certainty looking backwards, but back then I was just acting out of like pure faith. Some people may call it blind faith. But that's what was the fuel. The pain of self-abandonment had become so loud that I just could not allow myself to ignore that voice. So the first tangible step was, I'm out. I am out. Looking backwards, looking back, could have done things differently, most likely. But yeah, I could not ignore that. And along the way, they were just like making decision after decision to honor that inner calling, to sit with the confusion when it emerges because it's not linear. You don't necessarily have every single step laid out. So for me, what it looked like was I was on a scholarship and the scholarship was paying for everything. I needed to go get a job. But I did not want a job that was going to occupy all my space and time, the space and time that I needed to figure out things, to figure out myself, to work through the abandonment and rejection and shame that I was feeling. I needed space, mental space. I needed to find some sort of homeostasis within myself, which is that space where you can hear clearly what your inner divinity has to say. So I took a small job, like I started working in a restaurant. I did dishes here and there. Like honestly, it humbled me from a guy that had the prospect of working in big, you know, organizations and whatever. Like, I had never even shared some of the small jobs that I took with my family back then. They would have sent me a plane ticket. They would have been like, bro, get out of there. So he never did that. But just there was a humbling experience. And I often think before any elevation, there is a certain degree of humbling that needs to happen. And the humbling is the deepening. The humbling is the grounding. The humbling is the space that needs to be created so that you can actually receive what you've prayed for, even though you may not know fully what the answer to the prayer looks like. So there was that humbling. And there were just a few years of being a student, like a devoted student, like practical student. I I can't even recall how like I was living the work. I had to. It was a sustenance. And working with as the teachers that I could afford back then, the trainings that I could afford back then. And so there's that step of becoming a devoted student of your craft or becoming a devoted student of your higher self, the becoming a devoted student of your inner divinity, if I'm going to put it that way, becoming a devoted student of your calling. So I remember spending time looking at all the things that I've ever wanted, ever dreamt of doing. And I would just like spend time romancing all these things, just like, why am I doing this? And in that moment, there is a high degree of curiosity that is needed. So I allowed myself to romance these interests, but the ones that really felt like, okay, this is calling me. First, I thought, okay, maybe the first step for me is I am passionate about fitness and training and nutrition and all of that. So I became a health coach, and that was my first training that I took. Health coaching, fitness trainer. Started with that. Some point, I was like, okay, maybe I can complement. I started being interested in a few network marketing things that would complement what I was doing as a health coach. I tried that as well for a little while. Some point I was like, no, it's not it. It's not really it. What I was interested in was the part of like supporting people, infusing life into somebody that is feeling, desperate, that needs some sort of support. I was attracted by the mentality of improving ourselves and that we have the resources within ourselves to be able to do that. That's what was calling me in there. But I had to go towards that to figure out there's an aspect of clarity that comes from not mentally rehearsing things, but actually I call it tactical clarity. It's like you have to have your hands in it, feel the texture of the thing that you want to romance, the thing that you want to experience, to feel like, okay, yeah, it feels good, or no, it feels icky. It's not my thing. So I had to do that. I opened a gym at some point. We had so a few partners. We gathered together. We opened a gym that we closed after in 2018. And I just realized, yeah, I'm just flirting with I was operating from what I tend to call the symptoms, because somebody not being necessarily fit the way they want to or healthy the way they want to. It's usually the outer layers. Every time I would work with people, we had to go deeper, even when I was just training them. And every time I would feel, hey, you can do this. Like, what is going on? What is going on? What is keeping you from being able to do that? How do you feel when you just look at the plan that we have for today? This anxiety, the same things that were coming up. There was an emotional experience inside that was keeping them from being able to show up in the way they wanted to. So I was like, okay, I need to know how to address this anxiety. I need to know how to speak to that thing. I need to know how to support them at that level, because if I am here as the drill sergeant telling them, hey, let's go, it's like if I speak this level and I do not speak at the level of the body and the heart and the psyche, they cannot hear me. That was what I just found out working with people so much. And I was like, okay, let's go deeper. So through that, I started receiving clarity. And I started becoming, I didn't even know what life coaching was in 2013. It wasn't part of my language or my vocabulary. In 2014, when I started seeing things about life coaching, I was like, are you for real? Are you telling me that people earn a living just like coaching other people about life? Are you fucking kidding me? And I felt compelled. And then the imposter came up. Like, who the fuck do you think you are? Like, look at you. Like, you're a dude that came from Africa and you came here to study economics. And then all of a sudden you want to be what? Fucking life coach? It's like, what life experience do you have under your belt? So there was this whole time of dealing with all of this and, the full surrender to the work I'm doing right now really happened around, like, devoting myself to it really happened around 2018 when I shut down the gym and when we became pregnant with my first son that was born in January 2019. I was just like, you know what? I'm done fooling around. I'm not going to be the example of a father that that was too scared to even attempt what his heart has been calling him to do. This is not going to be my legacy. So 2018, in April 2018, when I found out that we were pregnant with my first son, I was like, okay, this gym thing I'm out. We got to shut it down. And we agreed on the terms of, shutting down the gym. I was like, I need to get out of there. So there was this big moment of just like, okay, enough. So in terms of my personal story, this is what the journey looked like. And yeah, I hope I can make it more tangible, but this is more of an outline, a general outline of how things went.
Mm. Oh, thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's so beautiful to hear a story of someone who is on this soulful journey, and you keep going deeper. And like you said, you're like doing things, trying it, not just living in the head of thoughts and ideas and, well, I don't know how, and that's too scary, and then I'll just stay where I am. Like, you're doing it, and you're in the back of the restaurant washing dishes and so devoted. I feel that so deeply. And my similar journey to weave in here with kind of how I've ended up being a coach as well is I was teaching voice lessons. And
Mm,
I was like, I'm not so excited to teach you how to sing the high C. I want to know, like, why are you afraid of singing the high C?
yeah.
What do you think is going to happen when you sing so big and loud, or what? And so very similarly, I feel a soul connection with you and your passion.
That's so beautiful that you mentioned that as well, because wanting wanting to understand the hidden forces behind people's limitations is always it has always been the drive. Because it is really my understanding that we live in a benevolent universe that prays for us to allow it to support us in the ways, in ways that would actually bring more light and brightness to our lives. So, inevitably, the path for me was to explore the shadow. It's like, okay, there are things that we don't see that are running the show, and it would be much more rewarding to see the fullness, and from that fullness to create more elegantly. So, yeah.
Life coach to shadow work facilitator. Like, did you start out in
Mhm.
more of a general life coaching, or are the teachers you found and the work that you were doing, was it already very spiritual and soulful?
Well, there was already a very spiritual foundation in all of it. And at the beginning, it was more. the very early stages, it was more about mindset coaching and NLP and all of these different things, which they served me really well. We're talking about when I was still in training, 2014, 2015, these early years, I was diving in that environment, and I was combining it with health coaching because I realized that, people that I was coaching and getting a health plan, nutrition plans for and programs for, it wasn't just about being given a plan. Most people can find out a plan in a few clicks on the internet for free. But it was sure there was also the accountability, but even with the accountability, sometimes it wouldn't work. It was something deeper. So I started investigating, okay, how can I include elements of mindset coaching in the way I'm working with people on health? And I did. And then when I started doing the transition into life coaching, it was definitely so clear that um, any type of work that excludes the heart, the body, and the soul is incomplete. That was my first awareness. And I was like, okay, it needs to be in holistic, integrative. It needs to go in that direction. And the more I was just working on my own personal blocks, the more I became aware of shadow work really early. And what I realized was unknowingly for myself, I was doing a lot of it already, becoming aware of like the emotions, just at the emotional level, the things that I had repressed, the emotions that I was uncomfortable feeling that I had to allow myself to be with. I had a moment, I think it was from the years 2016 to 2018, I started developing weird and pretty strong asthma symptoms from somebody that was pretty, like, I had no history of asthma. And it was pretty strong. I went to the hospital many times, and the doctors were just like, well, we don't see any reason why you should have asthma. You have you're in pretty great shape right now, and you are training and all of that. And it didn't seem to be any exercise induced asthma, but it was just there. And I started exploring as well the emotional reasons that can trigger dis-ease. And it was a time where I used to have severe panic attacks. So in these moments, a practice that I had back then from a teacher was every single time you have a panic attack, just sit in and feel into it instead of trying to run from it. Just tune into it, tune into the anxiety and ask the question, what do you want me to know right now is to just complete that sentence. And what came up was I was feeling so much repressed anger towards my father around that time. So much repressed anger because of the ways, there was a period of estrangement that happened after I decided to drop from the PhD. And I had to be with that repressed anger, that repressed rage. I had to be with that. So my own path informed a lot of the ways I started directing my own work. I was like, okay, if I had so many repressed emotions, so much bitterness inside of me, so much rage that was keeping me from being able to even sleep at night at times, what about the people that I'm helping? Is it possible that they may have some of the same things that are keeping them from being able to show up the way they desire to show up? So I started seeing that I was carrying a whole lot of shame. I started seeing that I I had a pattern of like denial about so many things, pattern of avoidance. I was avoiding some aspects of my own experience. You know, some point I was just like, okay, we have to see all of this. I have to go from avoidance to full transparency with myself. And if I'm not willing to be transparent with myself in the most sobering way, my patterns are going to keep running the show. And this also had to come into my work. So the 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 exploration of the shadow just made sense. And when I started leaning into this in the, back then in these years, I was just like, holy shit. Like, how come this language is not taught, to people? How come darkness is something that is so vilified that we don't have a healthy degree of curiosity with it. We just run from it. That's a that's a collective conditioning around darkness. Something is dark, a place is dark, boom, we run from it. And the more I started just doing that work of being present with everything that was present within me on the emotional level, what happened is around 2018, towards the end of the year, until today, all the freaking symptoms of asthma went away. Now, this is not any medical advice or whatever. I'm not trying to say here if you just go within and feel all your feelings and feel everything that you've repressed, any ailment is going to disappear and dissipate. But this is what happened for me. I call that these 2 years of dealing with intense intense symptoms of asthma. We call that asthma my shadow attack. And what I mean by shadow attack here, it doesn't mean that there was something evil inside of me that was trying to get at me. There was actually something benevolent inside of me that was trying to say, hey, slow down and listen. Slow down and just fucking listen. I'm sorry for my French. But that's what was coming up for me around that time because I was in such avoidance. First, avoidance of the shame that I was feeling because I had dropped out. And in the eyes of my family, I was just like the worst. That was the worst thing I could do, not only for myself, but to them. It was taken like I did that to them. I was running from all of that, running from feeling, honestly, feeling like a failure, which is another thing that I had to fully face, to fully embrace. I needed to feel some sort of emotional rock bottom. I was running from the feelings of depression that I had, or from the depression that was there back then. And I have a teacher of mine that often says that depression is a pain that we tolerate to avoid deeper pain. So it's like I was holding myself in this uncomfortable, uncomfortable safe space of depression, like not wanting to get out of bed to go do things, not wanting to, like the kind of like stagnant space. It's like an uncomfortable stagnancy that feels safe. I was keeping myself there. And as soon as I gave myself permission, let's go beneath the depression. Then the dissolving started happening. The spaciousness, it's like, the spaciousness that needed to happen in my life started unfolding. I remember the years 2018, there was a lot of relational clearing that
Mm.
I had to do with like literal relational clearing with family. We needed to, spill our hearts out. And I initiated some of that. I was like, you know what? I'm tired of being mad at you. I am tired of being angry at you. I'm tired of resenting you. Um, there's a part of me that loves you. I can feel it, but that part of me is so far, it's so underneath all these feelings that are right here. And I want to access that part of me again. And there was just so much relational clearing that needed to happen. And, with that, there was some spiritual dead weight that I carried that needed to be released. So that's that informed tremendously the way I work. It's like it cannot just be about focusing on what you want and trying to
Yes.
align to it and manifesting it, and all of that cannot just be about positive thinking your way into what you want to create. Yes, it's an aspect of the polarity. But if you are trying to to let's say drive a boat, I'm not sure, or navigate a boat while you have anchors in the ocean that are strongly anchored there, you're not going anywhere. And that was the realization for me. And from that moment on, everything changed within like a year, everything changed. So, it came a lot from experience.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, as someone who, starting in, gosh, I think I was 18, my family found a unity church. So very new age. The Secret, I think like we went and watched The Secret one night at our church. So that kind of language. And that's sort of where I was until 2 years ago when I found the program that I did. And I just finished a 18-month priestess training, and the diving into the depths, into the darkness, the transformation that has happened in that amount of time versus, this long time, almost over 2 decades of the other, of just being in the light.
Yeah.
Things like, especially for me, was like, my relationship to my body and the shame that I've had and like just the hatred of it, being at war with it since I was probably 10. And what's shifted since going into the shadows in the last, less than 2 years. I remember when I started, it was like this fear, and I get this so often with clients is, but I don't want to manifest it if I give my awareness to it, because that's kind of what we've been taught. If we're in this focus on what you want, say the affirmations, the universe doesn't understand the word no. So if you think like, I don't want this, the universe doesn't hear the word don't. And so you're saying, I want pain or whatever, like that's how so many of us were conditioned. And so when giving the space of like, what's here, the anger and the anxiety and this, I'd love for you to speak to your words around that. Those who fear the depths and what if I get stuck there?
Yeah. I often say that at first, I love what you're bringing up so much. I think it is so appropriate for hopefully many people listening. One thing that I would love to say about positive thinking. If your positive thinking just ends up at the things that feel good, it's not complete positive thinking. What I mean by that is, if you are only willing to feel hopeful and open and present and um, accepting and loving to the experiences that feel good, then it's not real positive thinking. It is shallow. It is limited. It is, I want to say, divided. It's not really, it doesn't welcome the full human experience. If gratitude is only applied to the things that actually feel good, it is myopic. And I'm not saying we shouldn't be grateful for the things that feel good. But the assumption, when you understand gratitude as receivership, it is the state of like, I receive. When you understand gratitude as receivership and you are not willing to be grateful or to receive an experience that does not feel good, the assumption underneath that is that the experience that doesn't feel good is wrong, not bad, but like bad for you, or I don't know, that it is something that is limiting your expansion. Here's a radical thought. If you truly sit with the perception that the universe is ultimately benevolent and that benevolence does not exclude darkness. I'm going to say that again. If you really sit with the thought form that the universe is ultimately benevolent and that benevolence does not exclude the experiences that we see as dark, even the darkest of the dark, then there must be some light under and darkened disguise in everything that we see as painful, horrible. There must be, if you really play along with that frame of thought just for a hot second. So that being said, if you have, let's continue with the game of polarity. Suppose that you have this higher self that is so in touch with your light, your divinity, your beauty. And you also have the shadow self that have been holding all the things, all the pain, all the things that were deemed unlovable, all the things that you don't want to be with, all the things that society has deemed were like, we can't have that here. If you really again assume that the universe is ultimately benevolent, that must mean that shadow self and higher self are twin brothers. And let's assume that they are even twin brothers. Maybe it goes deeper than that. Maybe the shadow self is just, the dark face of your higher self. Something like that. These are some of the conclusions that through writing, because I do a lot of writing now, I'm working on a book. These are some of the conclusions that just started coming up for me. It was just like, okay, if the universe is ultimately benevolent, that means if I close my heart to what I see within myself as dark, it is not really some sort of positive or like open-hearted thinking. I don't use positive thinking anymore because we usually make a strong separation between what is positive or negative, but it is myopic because we don't know what we don't know. Like something right now, something that happened that was a painful experience in my life was also very positive. Dropping the PhD was fucking painful. It threw me into a spiral of like several years, just trying to integrate after feeling this big fragmentation that it was to me, at the very least, it may seem small to other people, but from the conditioning that I emerged from, it was a tiny nuclear bomb in the way I saw the world. It resulted in a lot of fragmentation. Was it positive? Necessarily, no. It was painful. Was it difficult? Yes. Now, looking back, can I say was actually the most positive thing that ever happened to me? Absolutely, absolutely, yes. Could I see it back then? Absolutely no. Um, so what I would love to say to it is when you are looking at something that is already here, when you're doing shadow work, you are looking at something that is already here. It is not in the realm of it is not in the realm of the manifesting, but it's in the realm of the manifested. It's here. You are not manifesting something that's already here. You're looking at something that's already here. Trying to create a reality that negates what you're feeling here. It's almost like some sort of energetic gaslighting that we've been trying to do through positive thinking. It's like, no, you're not feeling what you feel. Just feel this instead. It's like trying to play this game. You're not feeling what you feel. Like try to feel this instead. You're not feeling sorrow right now. Try to feel this instead. And sometimes a part of you even rages, stop. Just rages, stop. How about you be with me? How about you bring that light of yours down here? Because shadow work is actually about descending light. When we are just keeping ourselves in the realm of positive thinking, the light is shallow. It's like the light can reach here, but the light wants actually to reach your roots. This is the paradigm that we're living at the moment. It wants to reach your roots. It wants to go through your heart. It wants to activate it. It wants to rewire the lower energy centers in the body. It wants to rewire how you know, how you even relate to survival. That light wants to rewire our very definition of survival. And in my opinion, that definition of survival is changing to include more presence with our fullness, especially the undarkened parts. So these are things that are coming up right now. And the more you are descending that light, it goes beyond positive thinking. I would say it's positive thinking on steroids. It's heartful thinking. It is like integrative thinking because it's about wholeness. If the positive thinking that you've bought into is denying your wholeness, then it doesn't include the whole. It is it is not working. And the reason why you've used the analogy, why it took you over 2 decades, to experience the shift that it only took you a few years to experience through the work that you've been doing. Again, imagine that you've been pushing a boat on the ocean while having many anchors at the bottom.
Mm.
It's almost as if you're
Yeah.
trying to drag the entire floor of the ocean with you, or you're trying to drag everything that is there with you. But if you just take a minute, and maybe, if you take a minute to dive in the ocean, to go see, okay, oh shit, I had anchors. I didn't even know that this boat had anchors. That's the first realization. And then you try to pull the anchors, you're like, okay, something is holding these anchors. Maybe I actually need to dive in for a second and to go to go support or to go remove any boulders from these anchors. You can actually move a lot with a lot more grace after you've done that work. Does it mean that you have to spend your life ruminating darkness? No. But here's something. When your shadow raises its hand, meaning there is trigger that happens, a fear that shows up. That's the shadow raising its hand. When there's a sudden feeling of anxiety that you don't understand, romance it. Romance it. And the integrative thinking is I am not moving forward while leaving any part of me behind. I really feel like we are moving from the perception of positive thinking to integrative thinking, meaning I am moving forward whole. I am moving forward whole. And that's what I have to say to this. So there's a weird harmony that we need to tap into at the moment in the ways we are creating the reality that we desire. And we are living in a paradigm where the earth herself is doing that work of integration, unless we would not be seeing all the darkness that we see in the collective right now. We wouldn't be seeing it. Trying to just obsess over what feels good, because this is what we mean by positive thinking. It's just like, I just want to obsess over what feels good. It is usually a way that doesn't bring sustainable transformation. It can bring us bursts of transformation that we have a hard time integrating, that we have a hard time grounding. But doing the work of integrative transformation is so sustainable. It feels like your whole being is expanding on both sides to receive what you are about to create. So yeah, this is what I have to say about it. I could say it in better words, but this is what I have coming up at the moment.
No, it's so beautiful. And I'm so glad that you brought it to the planet itself beyond the individual and into the collective. I think that's so huge. And to me, a lot of this work can sometimes get stuck speaking only about the individual. And I know this isn't where we are, but this is what came up for me towards the end is like, the Instagram version of this sometimes is like doing this so you can live your best life. Which, yes, but there's so much more and talking about like bringing it to the collective and the planet and this evolution of the new earth that's being birthed right now. And so then that makes me feel like the greatest work that I can be doing is to heal this relationship with these darkened parts of myself and to teach my sons to do the same and to, do that work with my partner. And that it just feels so beautiful. And you speak about this self-abandonment piece, which is what I've been doing. Those anchors for me are like the shame and the embarrassment, the humiliation, and those those stories around just so much pain. And through those decades of whenever I would bump up against those triggers, it's like, that's when I would abandon myself and judge myself and criticize myself and meeting ourselves where we are. And I love this phrase of like, I am moving forward without leaving any parts of that behind. Like, it is all allowed here and loved. And then the idea, this visual of them being twins, like my light and my love and my joy being equal to these other aspects of myself. I never would have considered it in that way before. And there's something so stunning about it, because I don't look at my 3-year-old and feel that way about him. Like, I don't just love him for his light. I'm like, give me your tantrums and give me your pain. Like, I love all of you. And so to bring that to ourselves is really revolutionary.
There's such a great point that you're bringing right there. It's like, when you are in the experience of a tantrum from your kids, does it feel great? It's like, are you like, yay, tantrum?
No.
Well, I have three kids too. They are very young, 2, 4, 2, 3, and 4. So when they have the tantrums, it's like, God damn it, I wish I didn't have to go through that right now, but here we go again. Let's deal with that in the most open-hearted way that I can access in this moment. And that is the key thing. It's like, when pain comes up and it knocks at your door, does it mean that you have to be, yay, pain? No, absolutely not. It hurts. Sometimes you don't want to be there. But we are really learning how to step out of conditional presence with ourselves. Because that's something that we've learned to do. I'm only willing to accept myself when when I look good, when my body is this way, when I've done everything that I'm supposed to do, when I have achieved whatever. I'm only willing to be present with myself. And by presence here, I just mean being in your body, being emotionally present, being attuned. Because sometimes we run. That is what we do in survival. We fight, we fly, we flee, we run, we play dead when we freeze. So that's what we do. And we are learning how to step out of it, which means even when shame is present in my body, I am here. Even when sadness is present in my body, I am here. I am willing to be with the scared child inside of me. I am willing to be with the part of me that is afraid of opening my heart again. I am choosing to be with part of me that is terrified that I may get attacked if I allow myself to shine in the ways that I want to. I am choosing to be with my fears. I am choosing to be, even with the joy that I repressed, I am choosing to be with the fullness of all of that. And when we allow ourselves to tune into that radical level of presence, that awareness is light. That kind of presence is light. That's the reason why our kids want our attention so much, because they feel that light. When mom is present with him, when dad is present with him or her, they just feel, they feel that light. Your unconditional, open-hearted presence is light. And when you bring that light to these darkened parts, what you create, there's an energetic fusion. It is physics to me. It's not even spiritual. It's not woo-woo. To me, it's like physics. You ignite something. And there is a fusion, literal fusion. You start to see, to feel all that energy that gets released. It's that creative energy that was contracted in your fears, and it gets released. It becomes available. And that's the reason why this work is such a big component of what I do today.
So people listening to this, myself, we're like, yes, there's a part of our being singing, resonating, like that's waking up, that's feeling like 100% in alignment, resonating. but so much of it is still our minds, our intellect, understanding
Yeah.
these as concepts.
Yeah.
And so how do you work with somebody, or what is a quick practice for the, okay, you're listening to this podcast or watching it, and then you're out in the world and boom, trigger, or boom, you're feeling so embarrassed about the conversation you just had with somebody, or you shared something that you wrote on Instagram and nobody cares. And it's, what do you do in that moment to bring that awareness, that light of awareness?
The first thing I would ask him to do is like, what I'm feeling right now is, I'd invite him to complete that sentence spontaneously as they can. What I'm feeling right now is, why I'm feeling it in my body is. And when I approach that feeling within myself, what I become aware of is, when I attune to that feeling even more, what else I feel is, I'll just bring them straight there. I hate feeling this way because I have been made to feel this way earlier when I'll just go through this. To anybody feeling this right now, would invite you to write some of these down and to work with them when a trigger comes up, because we usually make it about the circumstance and the event and what happened on the outside. But if you receive it as the gift of introspection, it will lead you somewhere. Ask yourself the question, I've been made to feel this way before. When? And back then when I felt that, what happened was. And sometimes we're going to find out that a trigger is usually a shadow flare that is pointing towards something else that was not completely integrated. Something else that wasn't completely integrated. And as you start leaning there, you're going to, the emotions that are present in my body as I connect to what was in my body are, these repressed emotions are. When I allow them to be here, what unfolds in my body is, you just allow yourself to be with the fullness of it. It's this radical introspection without trying to put something on top of it, without trying to take your, breathing and all of the things that we do. They are fantastic, but sometimes they can be also using mindfulness as a way to avoid something that we feel inside. I've done that. We go on a treadmill, boom, 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 running as a way to run from inside, working out as a way to tap out of what is inside, breathing as a way to kind of let me push it down for a minute.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah.
There are so many good practices. Let me thread really carefully here. Your breath is a beautiful, magnificent instrument that will be needed even as you approach these darkened parts. But sometimes we can use our breath as a way to disconnect. As a way to just like shut it down. The asthma that I was feeling back then, I was using my breath as a way to resist life itself. And back then I had to realize that the ways I was using my breath at that time weren't really supportive. So what I mean by this saying is, do not meditate yourself outside of what is trying to be seen. We can use our mindfulness practices as a way to tune out. We can go for a walk as a way to avoid being within. So all these practices are great and magnificent. Please keep doing them. But as you start approaching something that is willing to be seen, when we are experiencing a trigger, it needs to be done with a sobering level of openness. And sometimes when you will approach some of the feelings that you've been taming, your body will maybe need to shift its breathing pattern because you're tuning into deep sorrow and grief, and you're going to need to wail and be a mess if you try to box breathe as you are going through a deep experience of sadness. It's like you're going to step in the way of the experience. But the practice is like really deep. Dive in. When this person, or when you observed, when no one came on my Instagram profile and liked what I said, it made, and liked what I shared, it made me feel. How else it made me feel was. And to, when I connect to how it made me feel, how old I feel right now is, and you're going to usually find out that how old you are in the experience of the trigger, how old you feel. If you answer spontaneously, I've been triggered. I was like, okay, right now I feel like I'm five. And what happened around that time was that had a similar signature, what that was, and you really explore. It's this radical level of curiosity. It's really practical. And if you really answer with a high degree of spontaneity, you will find out that there is another intelligence inside of you that wants to give you the answers that you've been looking for. Your
Mm.
unconscious wants to play with. It wants to reveal. The job of your shadow is the work of revelation. We are going through times of revelation because we need to see what we weren't able to see before. So as you do your inner work of inner revelation, there is a freedom that emerges from that. And that's what I can say about a tiny, tiny practice. There's so much more that I could offer there, but this is a very simple, very tiny practice that could help somebody deal with the trigger.
And so we do that. And then how would you, even if one, stopped and did that for a minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes between, activities, or how do you close that as a practice and then come back into your day? What would you say? How would you leave it?
How do you close that? After allowing yourself to feel and to be with as much openness as you can, with everything that wanted to come up, with everything in the best of your ability. Because sometimes it's more challenging for some people. Sometimes people may need some external support, especially if the trigger was pointing towards a deeper pain, you know, um, deeper pain that may need to be witnessed, or they may need some degree of facilitation there. So for some people, it may lead them there. But a simple way to close it, as you allow yourself to be with things in the best of your capacity, um, it is really to ask yourself how I wish to have responded in that moment that felt inaccessible is one of the
Mm.
ways I wish I could have been able to show up in that moment, but that felt inaccessible is. And you really tune into it because sometimes the trigger can unfold in a relational situation. Somebody said something, but you were so thrown off that you were just reactive, or you said something that did not honor the person, or you shut down, you did not honor yourself. How I would have loved to show up in that moment is. And I usually invite people mentally rehearse. That is the moment where you really want to, after you've allowed yourself to be with the anchor and to lift the anchor in the best of your ability. That's the moment where you reach a more neutral phase where you can actually sit with the question, what would it look like? What would it actually look like from this place? And you're going to find out when the emotional intensity usually subsides. When you do that journey and you go within, you're going to move from the overactive, like the reactive space, to more of a homeostasis. You're going to feel that moment. You can even, and if you feel like you haven't reached the homeostasis yet, you can ask yourself another question. What else I need to see about this situation is? What else is
Mm.
here that I need to explore is? And again, the work is to allow yourself to become intimate with it. If it's a fear that you're feeling, if this fear could speak, what it would say is, you ask yourself that question. And what this part of me that I'm tuning in, that I'm feeling right now needs from me is. It's another beautiful question you get to ask yourself. And sometimes it's going to be to just be here and to just feel what is here. Sometimes it's going to sound like to just take a stand for yourself. You know, I don't know what that may be for
Yeah.
in that moment, but you really allow yourself to be with all of that. And then the next step is really rehearse what it would look like to show up in this, to respond in a more sovereign way in this situation, in this type of situation in the future is. And you're going to find out you have so many answers inside of you,
Mm.
so many answers. And now the next step is if there is any practical insight that you're tapping into, the invitation would be to take action on it. If the trigger emerge after conflict with somebody that you love and you feel like, okay, I need to repair something, then go ahead and do the repair. Um, but your inner wisdom is never going to let you down if you learn how to romance it.
Such a great word. A question that you ask in the workshop too, another one of these questions is if I didn't abandon myself in this moment, what I would do is just another, that one opens up something in me, and I've been using it over the last week. And it's like the brain is this incredible computer. So why not give it a question like that? And also, your inner wisdom as well. But the answers that arise versus kind of like where the headspace was before we stopped and did that inquiry it's incredible what we have access to.
It is incredible. It's as if you have access to infinite wisdom inside of you, but you are not. We usually spend very little time tapping into it. It's as if you have access to the internet and there's an answer that you need and you're like, no, I'm not gonna use Google or whatever. Like there's the information is there, it's there, it's on the internet, but you unconsciously you're like, no, I just don't want to check the internet, or I don't want to. So this is spiritually, this is how we are wired. And all these questions that you are asking, if you really answer them with as much spontaneity as you can, you may be surprised of what comes
Mm.
up. And very often, a lot of it really resonates as true. A lot of it, in my experience, a lot of it, I have hardly ever been deceived by that inner wisdom.
And do you feel like it takes some time to develop trust in that inner wisdom?
Yeah. That is the thing that we don't trust because
Right.
we don't trust our light, unfortunately. People think they do. But the calling that I felt back then to drop the PhD and go on that journey, I did not trust it.
Yeah.
I fought it for years, and then at some point I was just like I was trying a little bit. I was like, let me just try this thing or I was trying to fit that calling into my conditioning, but it was not part of my conditioning. I was trying to fit it into maybe I need to own a gym and that's how I'm going to help people. And that was part of my conditioning. I kind of like knew the blueprint for that. Um, Health coaching and all of that. I understood what that looked like and fitness training and all. I understood it was part of my
Mm.
conditioning. There was a blueprint to it. And I was like, okay, let me then just do this thing that is coming close, but that is not really it.
Mm.
We don't trust our light. And what we are learning how to do is actually to trust all light. And when your light, when you place an order, when you have a heart-centered desire, your heart is an instrument of integration. Your heart is at the intersection between the lower energy centers, meaning or more human realms, and the higher realms. It is a bridge. So when you have a heart-centered desire, the heart is going to do two things all at once. It is going to send a direct order to your higher self, and it's going to send an order to your lower self. The order that it sends to your higher self is bring here now any aspect of my brightness that I need to embrace in order to actualize this desire. And to your shadow self, it will say, bring to my awareness now any repressed part of me that I need to integrate, that I need to learn how to love again in order to actualize this desire. And it is this symbiotic mechanism, this magnificent design that is constantly working. And when we trust that, when you really trust that, that wisdom is actually benevolent. I'm inviting people to play with that on a smaller scale, maybe. Like really
Yeah.
play with that
Yeah.
on a small scale with like things that have lower stakes. I'm not asking you to go drop out of your job or anything like that tomorrow, but you can begin at a lower level. And you can even send this prayer. Show me. Show me that you are really benevolent. Show me that you are working in my favor. Let me see it. I have a hard time trusting you. Let me trust you. Like, give me evidence. Bring to me evidence that I can really surrender to this guidance. I want to, but I'm scared. That could be a beginning prayer that just states the reality of where you are. I am fucking scared. I don't know how to trust you. I don't think I've ever had any evidence that I can actually trust you. So work with me here. And there is an intelligence that is cosmic, that is divine, that is within you, that is embedded in your cells, that wants to work with you. That is one of my strongest help. It doesn't even feel like a belief; it feels like a knowingness at this point. It is no longer a belief.
My entire being is like vibrating, and it feels like it's rising up from the depths. Like it feels like Shakti energy, like creative energy. Like you've just called it forth. that that oh that way of seeing. You have this desire, and it couldn't be more perfect. This is where I was going to take us next, but you brought us, is the soulful ambition or heart's desire or sacred calling, longing. We all have it. And this idea that when we feel it, when it's here, when we listen, and that we're calling in the light that we need to realize it, and then to bring up the parts of us that need to be healed and integrated. I mean, that concept is stunning and paradigm shifting. Because how often do we have the dream and then the imposter comes up, or the fear of humiliation, and then we're like, oh, never mind, what was I thinking?
Yeah.
Like, let me just go back to what I was doing before.
And that was actually the answer.
Yes.
And that was part of the answer. That was actually your heart that's like, okay, look at this thing. Look at this thought form. Look at this psychic gunk that you still have within yourself. Look at it. There's something in there that needs to be loved, that I need to love. That's your heart saying, I need to love this. The part of you that speaks this language, I need to love that part. I need you to bring your awareness there, meaning I need to descend awareness. If you pay attention to awareness, awareness is here. It's usually here. It's like we operate here. We look at the world from here. And the heart is like, I need you to descend here because I need to love this, but I can't see it. So I need this, descend here. And it becomes heart-centered awareness. It becomes coherent. It becomes congruent. And from that awareness, there is this, it's like the magnetic engine of the heart is now like allowed to play its role. It is no longer something that is polarized. It becomes integrated. And from that place, the pulse, the energetic pulse, your capacity to line up with things that you want, even the energy that you carry into the actions that may lead towards what you want, it is done differently. And you have also demonstrated to yourself that in that moment, you're no longer afraid of the fear of humiliation because you know how to sit with it. You know how to sit with it. Does it mean that you will never ever feel humiliated again? No. Does it mean that you'll never ever feel shame again? No. But you know how to sit with it. You know how to be with it. You know how to grant love again to these aspects of you. And that is what an inner wisdom inside of you wants to trust. That part of you wants to ask you if and when humiliation comes up again, what are you going to do? Are you going to abandon me? Or are you going to keep hold? Are you going to stand by me? If I get attacked in the comments on Instagram, are you going to stand by me or are you going to run? Are you going to disown me? That's what your light needs to
Mm-hmm.
know. If your husband, your partner, your family member says you're delusional, what are you going to do? Are you going to be with me or are you going to disown me? And every time you are willing to face these fears, what your answer is, what you're telling is, I'm going to stand by
Mm.
you. We're going to be in this shit together. I'm not going to run. I'm not going to shut it down. I am here. And that is a big thing that is we are learning collectively right now.
So, if we could spend the last 5 minutes bringing words to what is on the other side or what is inside the shadow, what is buried beneath the depths, and that is that light and the golden shadow that you speak of, and maybe that sort of being this like awakening and calling that forth in everybody listening too. So if we can all, receive the words that you can bring, that'd be a gift.
Well, a big misconception about the shadow is that it's only dark, that it's only dread, it's only fear, it's only all the things that we've been conditioned to see as unlovable. I know many people who have their joy in the shadow. I know many people who have their sensuality in the shadow. I know many people who have the craft, the gifts in the shadow, because some point in time they were in environments where it wasn't necessarily nurtured or it was taken advantage of. And they equated expressing all of these aspects of themselves with being unsafe. And the reason why we actually do shadow work is to remove all the darkness that we have wrapped around our light. It's another reason. We kind of work on transmuting all the darkness that we have wrapped around our light. It's almost like you're a gold digger, but not, not the, not the, a gold digger in the slang kind of way that is trying to get somebody else's money. But you're a real gold digger. You're a miner, a gold miner. Let's put it that way. And when you mine for gold, you have to dig dirt. You have to dig dirt and you have to clean the dirt. And that is another aspect of doing this practice because we have so many gifts that we have disowned. And sometimes, when you do, if you only want to do some sort of positive thinking, but even your positive thinking is pointing you towards a shadow, if you're avoiding it, you're not gonna excavate the beauty, which is the reason why sometimes the most beautiful thing is to allow ourselves to explore that, to allow ourselves to excavate that, to allow ourselves to, but not to spend. This is something that in the field of shadow work, we often call the shadow of shadow work. It's like as soon as people see the value in shadow work, they're just like, okay, what other shadow element do I need to integrate so that I can be more free?
Yes,
Well, it's like, you don't need to chase your shadow.
they'll come.
You don't need to chase your
Yeah.
shadow. It will come. It will come. It will find you. Like, live your life. Intend on the things that you genuinely wish to experience. And if and when any shadow material comes up, allow yourself to be with it. Understanding that it is not in the way, it is part of the way. And a way towards what? A way towards more integrated. I think we are really getting to a place where we are integrating our own inner divinity. It's like building a bridge between our humanness and our inner divinity, a stronger bridge, a grounded bridge, a bridge that is not flying above your humanness.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I don't want to make too many religious bridges here, but I was born in a very Christian family, but I really feel like in this paradigm, the return of the Christ is more of a return of a Christ-like consciousness. It's somebody that was willing to be fully human, and at the same time tapped in, tuned in with that inner divinity to such a high degree that being in the mere presence of this human being, and I'm using human being by design, could generate healing force for people that were feeling sick. So I really feel like this is the door that we have entered. We already there, and we just get to actualize that even more. And that the golden shadow, the collective golden shadow is the golden human, in my opinion. It is that new human that is so tuned in, like so present, so here, not trying to be enlightened outside of here, but understanding that the destination of enlightenment is here. The destination of ascension is here. It's like, I am ascending to be here, to be fully human. I am living the desire of my soul. My soul called me here. My soul intended for me to be here in this moment. Are you kidding me? Either my soul was dumb if this is just a planet of continuous suffering, or there is something that I'm starting to realize here, that there is beauty that can be actualized on this earth plane, and that the earth herself had that desire to expand. And the earth called my soul here, and my soul said yes. I want to believe that my soul wasn't stupid. So there must be some sort of like hidden beauty in the midst of all the darkness that we get to move through. So we are truly in the paradigm of awakening that golden shadow. These are a few words I can offer about it, and
no, it's perfect.
Yeah, that's mostly the energy that is present.
Yeah. Yeah. As you're speaking there, I was just feeling so overwhelmed with like our souls get to dance to, like, how are you and me here in this now moment that our souls are dancing together, and then all those that are listening, that just such deep gratitude that we get to do this in this way. Yeah. For those of you who are longing for more, as I mentioned, the Awaken Your Golden Shadow workshop, and I'm sure by the time this podcast is released, there will be other offerings. But Xavier, where can people find you?
Well, first I want to say thank you for having me again, and people can find me on my website, XavierDagba.com, and also on Instagram, Xavier.Dagba. If you look me up, you'll find me.
Yeah, and there'll be links in the show notes for everything as well. Just deep gratitude for you sharing your light and your wisdom and your life's journey and experience with us today. I know that listeners will be moved and inspired to take another step into themselves because of this conversation. And so just a deep bow and gratitude.
Well, it was a deep pleasure. And thank you so much, Analisa, for having me here. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And we will be back here next week at Soulful Ambition. Thank you all so much for listening. Have a beautiful week.